Okay, gonna do something a little bit different today. I thought it'd be kind of cool to compare old school Ford with a 5.0 V8 versus a all-electric Ford Lightning. Gonna do the same loop I've done with several trucks and several brands and several different powertrains now, between 150s, 250s, 350s, 450s, Chevrolets, GMCs, and Rams, and kind of compare these different trucks to each other. And I'm gonna do a comparison at the end to kind of show you mile per gallon versus mile per gallon E, and do a little bit of an equivalency of cost to drive per mile on these two trucks. So gonna be kind of neat to kind of look at when you think of this is the history of Ford for, you know, almost 100 years was V8s, and how this is the new future of electrification. And what's cool with Ford is not only do they have the full range from V8 to electric, they also have hybrids, Ecoboost, and everything in between. A little cold start. 5.0 sounds good. This one's a little bit different than the one we did a week ago, because this one has 331 gears. The other one had a 373 with a max tow with a bigger rear axle. This truck also is a 5.5 foot box, so it should be a little bit lighter weight. The whole focus on today is just trying to see fuel economy. The last truck I drove had the electronic park brake light on because it had a little bit of a battery issue, but the truck ran and felt fine. But let's just rule that out, and we will see how this truck does. Okay, gonna jump in the F-150, the 5.0. This is an XLT. I'm gonna see if this is a 302A, just to kind of get a feel for options. It's got the traditional leaf sprung suspension, standard dampeners, doesn't have any of the ride height sensors, no spray and bed liner. Let's see what the payload is on this. 2,002 pounds. That might be the highest I've ever seen on a half-ton truck. So check out the GVW, 7,050 minus 2,000. That means this truck is just shy of 5,000 pounds, whereas the Lightning is 7,000 pounds. That truck is almost 2,000 pounds heavier than this truck. I'm gonna go do a quick warm-up loop just to get some heat into the cooling and transmission, because the whole point of doing this video today is I wanna see with a smaller gear ratio, how much of an impact does it have on fuel economy versus the last truck we just did. All right, let's do the loop now with the 5.0. I just went and did about 7 miles of driving just to kind of warm up the engine before we start this. So the third generation Coyote has really nice low to mid-range power. You didn't see that level of low-end performance in the prior generation F-150s. This truck has decent pickup, and you don't even have to get into the throttle all that much. Okay, coming into the halfway point, and so far, I can tell you that I'm getting better fuel economy than the last 5.0 I did. And I'm wondering if it's a combination of this truck is not a max tow. It's got the 331 gears, whereas the other truck had the 3.73 gears. And the other had the, I believe, 9 3/4 inch rear axle, where this had the 8.8 inch. Some other things I like about the Ford F-150s is how it shows the transmission as far as what gear it's in. Just like the other 5.0 truck, the transmission shifts very smooth, no issues there. I'm really happy that Ford has continued with evolving the V8 while the Ecoboost engines have been so successful. It's great to see that Ford has still decided to make improvements on their traditional V8s for the people that want the V8s. And this one to me is the most fuel efficient V8 from Ford I've ever driven. And it's got the best low end torque. It's kind of impressive such a small displacement gasoline V8 can have such good fuel economy. It just kind of shows how much these vehicles have advanced. Okay, let's see how the start stop feature works. Let's see if it works this time. There we go. So start stop is working now. Done about 21 miles, and this is the first time it's actually kicked in. All right, let's see what it sounds like when it kicks in. Very smooth. I don't hear any relays or modules kicking on with the start stop feature, where you do hear with some other brands in the marketplace. I don't also feel any sort of weird vibration or anything that makes it noticeable that the engine is kicking on and off. Catching similar amount of stoplights for this trip. Once again, this is real world. The only thing I can control is the speed and the loop, and I keep those consistent each time. Okay, just finishing up the loop here. Thank Bob Maxey here for letting me do the review on these trucks for you guys. and Josh is my sales guy. I'll put a link down in the description. He's a great person. I know I've talked about him in other videos. Low pressure sales guy, he gets it. Okay, just pulled in. There we go. 20.5 miles per gallon for the 17.8 miles with the 5.0 with the 331 gear. So I went back and looked at my old footage and I put a screenshot here. The last time I did the 5.0, which was a week ago, another truck, but with 3.73 gears, 18.3 miles per gallon. What's interesting about this is that's 2.2 miles per gallon better than this truck I just did with the 5.0. So could it be from the 331 to the 373 gears? Could it also be a combination of maybe something up because of the battery and it was putting an extra load on the powertrain? Hard to say, but that's a pretty big difference. So I'll include the window sticker for this truck so you can kind of see the options and the prices. This one is available. So let's do the cold start with the Lightning now. Oh, that's right. It doesn't have cold start. This thing, I guess, is just ready to go. Nice and warm. This is a pretty loaded out truck. This is the Platinum. Kind of see the Charger. I mean, a lot of people are pretty familiar with these trucks. And if you're not, this is actually, of all the F-Series trucks I've driven, this is the first Lightning I've ever driven. I'm kind of behind on the times with this, but just looking at the interior, looks literally identical to a regular F-150. The only difference kind of is really this screen area, but the dash layout looks very similar. The seats, this is a Platinum, so seats in this thing look awesome. I'm gonna kind of check out now the payload. So 1,600 pounds. This is where we're gonna see a big difference. This is an 8,550 pound GVW. So if you take 8,500 minus 1,600, that means this truck is almost 7,000 pounds. It's pretty loaded out too. So it's gonna be interesting to see how this truck drives. So you can see this has got coilover suspension, independent front and rear suspension. Here's the difference in the rear ends too. If you've never seen a Lightning, you kind of got the light bar that goes across the back, but the bumpers are identical. Looks like the hitches are identical. Tailgates actually look very similar, other than the tail lights and the lights that go across. I think the inside of the beds look the same. Yep, everything's the same. I'm going to warm this up also while the 5.0 is warming up to do our mile per gallon loop. Let's see how this works. Just kind of show the backup camera on this because it's a completely different screen than a traditional F-150. So obviously you got your standard camera up top with the 360 down below. It looks like the same resolution. I don't see anything different in that regard. I personally am a fan of buttons more than this because I think it sometimes can take your eyes off the road and just makes it more difficult. Just like the regular F-150, you got a glove box above, a glove box below. So that's nice, really nice leather touch surface on the top. Got the B&O sound system. And during this model year, nicely, they still had the speakers in the headrest. This is a really nice truck, super loaded out, being a Platinum. It's got the workspace. This is so much like a regular F-150, it's wild. Gonna turn the heat all the way on. It's really cold out today, 34 degrees. It's so weird just sitting here. I don't hear any engine noise, no vibration in the seat, nothing in the steering wheel. Really nice truck. I kind of like this dash layout, to be fair, a little bit more than the standard F-150. So we're sitting at 64% charge. I will do the same loop that I've done in other cases. Before I set the tripometer, I kind of want to show you here. This truck has 260 miles in this trip at 1.8 miles per kilowatt hour. Let's see now. I'm going to reset this and we will see how this does. And I'm going to treat this truck the same as how I did the regular F-150. I'll drive it similar acceleration. I'll run the heat and we will get on the road. So it's interesting driving the Lightning. A few things I've noticed. I'm looking for a drive mode button and I haven't seen it anywhere in here. You've got the regenerative braking here. So that's kind of cool. I know these things have a lot of power, but this whole video is about efficiency and kind of comparing. So I'm not going to get into the throttle for this video because I want it to be an equal comparison and kind of see how this thing does on efficiency. But it's so weird. I mean, I've never driven an electric truck before and it's quiet. You don't hear any powertrain noise, but to be fair, the other Ford powertrains are so quiet that you don't hear much with those anyway. So initial impressions driving the Lightning. Comparison from road noise and wind noise. You know, you don't hear an engine, but to be fair, on any of the new ICE trucks, you rarely hear an engine anyhow. They have such good sound attenuation with keeping powertrain noise out of the cab area. So yeah, you don't hear that. I'm sure as soon as you stomp on it, on the throttle, then that would be where you would hear a traditional internal combustion engine you know, get louder, where this is just going to go faster with no noise. I definitely feel like I'm struggling to keep the interior cabin very warm. I've been playing around with the settings a little bit in the HVAC. As far as pedal feel, steering feel, ride comfort, I think the ride is a little bit stiffer on this truck than the last truck I drove, but it also kind of makes sense because this truck is on 22-inch rims and that XLT I drove was on 18-inch rims. So that's probably part of it. The dash is obviously different, the IP as far as the gauges and what you're seeing. It doesn't feel much different, to be fair, than a regular F-150. I mean, and I think that was Ford's goal with this truck, is make it feel like what people are familiar with, which is the F-150. And I think they did a pretty good job on that. If you didn't tell someone and they drove this and they didn't think about you're driving electric, you wouldn't notice anything different. So this is where the Lightning would do a lot better, is on deceleration. Whereas a traditional vehicle, you're gonna lose energy through braking and decel. Whereas at least with an electric vehicle, this is one of the areas where a electric vehicle is more efficient, is on the braking, because you can recapture some of that energy loss through your regenerative braking. First impressions, number one, I like these platinum seats. These things are really comfortable. I feel like Ford seats are awesome in this new generation truck. Very, very comfortable. All the way from the XLT I just drove, all the way to this platinum seat. Feels great. Drive handling characteristics, steering feel, pedal feel, brake feel, seat feel. I can hardly tell any difference of the handling characteristics of a gas versus the electric version. All three of the different variants, hybrid, pure ice, and electric, I don't really notice any difference in drive handling as far as in the interior comfort and everything. And noise you hear in front of us is an old vehicle in front. That's the exhaust sound. You can tell that warming the cabin takes a little bit more energy in an electric vehicle. That really draws a lot from the range, is the energy use for heating the cabin, whereas in an ICE engine, they just draw heat right from the coolant, so it's easy. There's no parasitic loss or range loss with a gas engine. This is a nice truck. I don't mind it. If you live in an area where you are city driving, short range, short distance, you just need a bed, you're not towing heavy, this would be a great option. For me, typically my driving, more rural, I'm driving long distance. There's a lot of times where in the summer and in the fall and in the spring where I'm driving 350 to 500 miles in one day. And sometimes I'm towing that much. So unfortunately, the technology is still not there in electrification to meet my needs. But there's a lot I like about electric. What I like right off the bat is I love the idea of no maintenance. Never having to worry about spark plugs or oil changes or air filters. That's kind of cool. I like that part. Charging at home is kind of neat. And this is something I've also told people. One of the things I like about electrification versus an internal combustion engine, if you're all about like being like off the grid or self-sufficient, how cool would it be to have like a solar setup where you could charge your electric vehicle and you're literally making your own energy. But I just think it's kind of cool. Like if I was ever going to get an electric vehicle, I think I would probably do solar at the same time, just from a standpoint of being self-sufficient. I think is really cool. Also, I'm going to include the window sticker for this truck so you can kind of check it out. And I'm also going to, at the end of this video, we'll kind of show what it's like from an MPGe use of cost per mile to drive this versus cost per mile in the 5.0 F-150. I'll show you the energy rates in Michigan, and you can kind of see, you know, every state has their kilowatt hour pricing. Some states are regulated, some are not. Basically, the real simple math is you multiply the miles per kilowatt hour, and you basically just say, well, if you need, in this case right now, we're averaging 1.6 miles per kilowatt hour, you could figure out real quickly, well, a kilowatt hour in Michigan is 19 cents. So do the math on that, and you can put that into a cost per mile, and then you can compare that to an internal combustion engine. What is the cost per mile? This is where I think electrification, it doesn't bring as big a benefit because a electric truck is not as efficient going through the air as like an electric car. I think you're going to see a lot of electric cars more in the 3 to 4 miles per kilowatt hour of efficiency, and especially in the wintertime, you're gonna have less range because you need the interior cab to stay warm. And I think I've got this set up. Let me see if this is in auto. Let's see, auto. I had it a little warmer because it's been struggling to keep me warm, but I'm at 72 auto in the cab, the same I do with every single vehicle. Just finishing up the last part of the loop, and this is where, like I said, this is where electric does really well, is on the D-cell. You can see I'm just recapturing that energy loss on the lower left-hand side during the braking. When you're coming to a stoplight, a lot of times I'm thinking, oh man, you're just burning fuel sitting here. Whereas when you have electric, you don't really think about that, because actually on the D-cell, you're picking up efficiency to charge the battery. And now while I'm sitting here, I'm not really using any energy use. A little bit through heating the cab right now, but not much. So it's just kind of funny. They're polar opposites. You get your efficiency driving down the road with ICE, whereas you get your efficiency not moving with electrification, which all proves to the point, if you're in the city, you're doing more city driving, electrification makes more sense because you're sitting more than you're driving. And if you're driving more, ICE makes sense. I'd like to see the automotive manufacturers focus more in explaining and educating consumers on why you would choose a certain powertrain. Like for me, if you live in a rural area and you're, or highway, specifically highway driving, you're not going to get any benefit to a hybrid vehicle. Where hybrid makes sense is rural driving, 50, 55 miles per hour or slower. Like city driving is where you get some of that benefit. And then electric does the most benefit in city driving primarily. And the higher the speeds, the more the efficiency drops with electrification. This is where consumers have to kind of educate themselves. Okay, pulling back into Bob Maxey. Let's see where we end up with this. So there we go. 17.5 miles it shows, and 1.6 miles per kilowatt hour. I'll do the conversion, multiply that by the state of Michigan energy rate, and we can kind of turn that into an MPGe to compare that to the F-150. So I'm glad I finally got the chance to driving the Lightning. I actually ordered one of these trucks the day of the original launch because I saw this as the biggest game changer in the automotive industry, probably since the Model T. When the truck was initially launched, it was $39,000 for a four-wheel drive electric pro trim level. When you include the rebates and any other incentives, this was a heck of a value truck. Unfortunately, COVID hit, inflation's went out of control in this country, and now that same truck is near $60,000. So I canceled my order and withdrew from the process. I still like the Lightning. I think it's really cool. It unfortunately doesn't work for my lifestyle, but I do look forward to when the technology improves for range and charge time. I would absolutely consider an electric truck. But I think it's really cool that Ford allows so many different options, from a 5.0 traditional V8 to two different Ecoboost to a Powerboost hybrid and the Lightning. The point of this video is doing a mile per gallon comparison. If you drove this truck, both these trucks, 15,000 miles at the current gas prices, at the current electric prices, and given this type of MPG, it would cost me $1,800 in electricity charging 100% at home for the Lightning, and it would cost me $1,950 for the 5-liter V8. I find these numbers very, very close over a 12-month period, so make your decisions accordingly. I hope you find this video insightful, and if you're interested in either of these trucks, reach out to Bob Maxey and Josh in sales, and he will take care of you.